Shalom. This week's Torah portion is Chayei Sarah, the life of Sarah, beginning in Genesis chapter 23. Our portion begins with the death of the matriarch Sarah. Sarah was a greater prophet than Avraham, and it was only together with Sarah that Avraham was able to change the world. The portion details Avraham's purchase of the field of Machpelah in Hebron for her burial. For a long time now, Avraham had been aware of the holiness of this place and the cave located here, which was the burial place of Adam and Eve, and which he knew, through prophetic experience, was the very entrance to Gan Eden, to the Garden of Eden, and the key to his children inheriting the land as God had promised him. Thus, he made sure to acquire it as a burial place for all time, and it's here that Avraham himself will be buried, as well as Yitzchak and Rivka, and Yaakov and Leah. This is a Torah portion of transition, of passages, of passing the legacy from one generation to the next. After Avraham had purchased the field of Machpelah in Hebron and buried Sarah, his priority is to find a righteous wife for his son Yitzchak. Just as Avraham was united with Sarah on the deepest soul level, now the search must begin for Yitzchak's true soulmate, who will join together with him in carrying on with the way of kindness and knowledge of God. As Avraham prepares to send his trusty servant Eliezer on this mission, which we learn is immediately blessed with divine success, verse 1 of chapter 24 informs us, "Now Avraham was old, advanced in years, and Hashem had blessed Avraham with everything." There is inherent in Avraham's quintessence something that Torah is here describing as old age, that connects him personally with the universal concept of the coming of old age, but in a special way, a way that expresses the essence of the secret of old age. Midrash focuses on this verse and states that Avraham is the first person to whom Torah ascribes old age. The enigmatic teaching goes on to inform us that until Avraham, there was no such thing as visible aging. He's the first person who experienced it. Avraham prayed to God and asked that a recognizable differentiation be made between youth and old age. The language of the Midrash is as follows, but bear in mind, please, as we learn together, that Midrash utilizes poetic metaphor and is rarely meant to be understood literally. The teaching states that, up until this point, young and old, parents and children looked exactly the same. That is to say, Avraham and Yitzchak had the identical appearance. This led to confusion, and Avraham asked Hashem in his mercy to change the situation. And God responded to Avraham, "You have asked well. I'll start with you." And thus continues the Midrash, he is the first person to whom Hashem granted old age. From the beginning of Genesis until now, there was no old age, concludes the Midrash, but Hashem presented it to Avraham, as the verse states, and Avraham was old, advanced in years. This teaching is perplexing because it doesn't seem to be accurate in the least bit. We all know that old age has most certainly been mentioned in the Torah prior to this verse. For example, regarding the wicked citizens of Sodom, back in chapter 19 of Parashat Vayera, verse 4 states, "They had not yet laid down when the people of the city, the people of Sodom, converged upon the house from young to old." And there are other examples as well. Clearly, people also grew old before Avraham. Yet the sages are here teaching us that Avraham prayed for, asked mercy for, recognizable old age, which God then institutionalized in his merit. So how do we understand this? So open up your heart. This isn't about the simple understanding of old age. That had already been in the world. Avraham's old age is what zikna, the old age that needs to be acquired, that's recognizable by white hair, what that represents. This was something that had not previously been in this world. And for this, Avraham interceded for Hashem's mercy, for the true meaning of old age to be recognized. The great Maharal explains, the Torah's idea of old age is identified with a person who has acquired understanding and wisdom, but until Avraham's time, the generations were lacking wisdom because they did not recognize the Creator. That recognition is the source, the true source of wisdom. And because it was missing, the understanding and intelligence of those previous generations was suspended in an immature state. Call it arrested development. Sure, people grew old before Avraham and Sarah, but Torah's message is that they did not achieve the level of zikna, the crown of old age. Avraham's mission, was to bring the world to recognize the Creator, in order for man to be free from the constraints of intellectual immaturity and rise to the level of true and lasting intelligence that comes with age, as represented by the perfection of old age. Through disseminating knowledge of the Creator, Avraham bequeathed true intelligence to the world, and it was his prayer that this should be lasting and solid for all time, for all humanity. As illustrated by the Midrash, he asked that there should be visible distinction of zikna, of old age, so that it would be clear that with the maturity of intellect, a person has made a difference in the world. Avraham accomplished that knowledge of Hashem should be passed down as a legacy for all humanity from generation to generation. And that is what this teaching means, that old age originated with him. Yet at the same time, open up your heart in the deepest way, there's also something about Avraham and Sarah in old age that remains young and is constantly renewed, as reflected by the words of Psalms 103, verse 5, who satisfies your mouth with goodness so that your youth is renewed like the eagle. Avraham and Sarah are people in whom youth and old age exist simultaneously. How can this be? This puzzling dichotomy is beautifully portrayed and its solution provided by an amazing teaching. The Talmud and Midrash tell us that our forefather Abraham minted a coin. What was his coin? It depicted an old man and an old woman, an elderly couple on one side, and on the other side, a young boy and girl. So these two sides of the coin, age and youth, what do they represent? Rashi and others explain that the elderly couple are Avraham and Sarah, and the youths, on the flip side, Yitzchak and Rivka. And according to this understanding, the coin represents the handing over, the passing of the mantle of the spiritual legacy to the next generation. But open up your heart even deeper, because other great sages express the idea that both sides represent Avraham and Sarah. On one side, Avraham and Sarah in old age, and on the other, in their youth. On one simple level, this could be seen to convey the idea that their youth returned to them, that it was miraculously restored to them in their old age, because together they had a child, and birth is generally experienced only by the young. And as an interesting and somewhat ironic aside, the Israel Government Coins and Metals Corporation decided to issue a medal based on the coin described in the Midrash. In 2006, the corporation minted a commemorative Abraham and Sarah coin in bronze available for purchase. You can find it on their website. This commemorative coin features, in their words, as featured on the corporation's website, an elderly man and an elderly woman on one side and a boy and girl on the other. The website adds that the coin symbolizes the miracle of the birth of Isaac to such elderly parents. Ironic because while there are even scholarly opinions who, like the Israel Government Coins and Metals Corporation, interpret this tradition literally, upon closer examination it becomes clear that with all due respect to coin collectors the world over, this is not about numismatics. The brilliant teachings of our wise and holy sages in the Midrash are allegorical, poetic devices and can easily be misunderstood if one attempts to interpret them literally. Literal interpretation of Midrash doesn't generally end well because it doesn't accomplish the intended goal of the teaching. This depiction of our forefathers Abraham's coin alludes to what such an idea symbolically represents and the awesome concept that it conveys. So what is that? The idea of the minting of a coin is a powerful metaphor representing sovereignty, influence upon society, and acceptance by the public. A coin has no value if its currency is not accepted for use by the public, and thus we find in our very portion, verse 16 informs us that Avraham purchased the field of Machpelah in negotiable currency. Now every king issues his own coin, and Avraham and Sarah, whose selflessness, teachings, wisdom, and guidance touched the lives of countless souls, they were considered like royalty by the many whom they rescued from idolatry and brought to Hashem, those whom they brought under the wings of the divine presence, in the language of our sages. In fact, this aspect of royalty is expressed quite literally in the very beginning of our portion this week, when Avraham made his initial request for a burial site for Sarah. Verses 5 and 6 read, "And the children of Chet answered Avraham, saying to him, 'Hear us, my master, you are a prince of God in our midst.'" So even as allegory, how fitting that Avraham minted a coin. But Avraham and Sarah's coin is more than a mere indication of their status or accomplishments, as awesome as they were. Abraham was not a king in terms of being declared sovereign over a massive realm, but he did bring about an unprecedented spiritual revolution that even in his own lifetime was already acknowledged by everyone. You know, as a child, I learned about the Greek philosophers. A legend is told of the Greek philosopher Diogenes the Cynic. A major source of the legends about Diogenes is the 3rd century Roman doxographer Diogenes Laertius. Many of his stories about Diogenes are suspiciously similar to stories about other figures, and thus historians write that most anecdotes about Diogenes are fictions or, open up your heart, borrowed from older cultures. I think this particular anecdote can enlighten us. In this story, Diogenes became involved in a conspiracy to deface the currency of Greece and was sentenced and arrested for the crime of forgery. The story goes that after consulting the Delphic oracle for advice on whether to continue in this fraud, he was seemingly encouraged to do so. But Diogenes did not comprehend that the oracle was really advising him to alter the customs of Greece, since the Greek word that was expressed is ambiguous, meaning both coinage and customs. Later, this Delphic utterance was adopted as the slogan of the Cynic sect of Greek philosophy and translated as change the currency or revaluate values. Precisely so. And herein lies the true secret of Abraham's coin. The ancient motif of minting a new coin, rooted in our sages' brilliant understanding of Abraham, is about changing society's values. Abraham and Sarah together brought about the greatest and most desirable change possible in society, knowledge that there is the Creator. They turned the values of the world around completely. They changed the currency. So open up your heart deeper than ever before in your life, because the deepest truth is that both sides of the coin depict Abraham and Sarah. Abraham and Sarah old, and Abraham and Sarah young. But in Abraham and Sarah, the two sides exist simultaneously at one and the same time. Their old age was a bridge that connected to their youth. Youth is characterized by excitement and energy and positivity and the power to bring about change and lead a revolution. With age comes stability and the calculated voice of reason. Acquired wisdom leads to humility, leads to intellectual maturity. So many people have a hard time with growing old. Few celebrate it, and many try hard to deny it or disguise it. But through recognition of God, Abraham and Sarah succeeded in fusing the goodness of old age with the goodness of youth. They combined the idealism of youth with the wisdom of age. And the older they got, the younger they got, renewed like the eagle. Or as Bob Dylan sang in his song, My Back Pages, back in 1964, but I was so much older then. I'm younger than that now. Indeed, this couple, the first Jewish couple, changed history. The famed Spanish explorer Juan Ponce de Leon allegedly sought the mythical fountain of youth in Florida. But our sages are teaching us that Abraham and Sarah truly manifested the secret of perpetual youth, of staying forever young. Shalom. Thank you for watching. We look forward to your feedback and comments and invite you to participate in our weekly Zoom Torah lessons. Jerusalem Lights is a nonprofit organization. Please consider donating to help us continue to bring you these messages. Shabbat Shalom, and like Abraham and Sarah, may the recognition of the Creator help you to stay forever young.